أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله. أستغفر الله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Jazakallah to all brothers for coming again. MashaAllah, 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 MashaAllah. So we literally just started, MashaAllah. We'll cover two topics today as well. Chapter 15 and chapter 16, they're not too long. Chapter 15 is stinginess. So the 15th of the 47 diseases of the heart is stinginess, and the 16th illness of the heart is long expectations, long expectations. So inshallah, stinginess, the definition and a verse of the Quran Sharif. We might think we know what stinginess is, but inshallah, hopefully this definition will enlighten us a bit today as well. Okay. So definition of stinginess in Arabic, we know what it is in Arabic. Bukhl, a stingy person is called a bakhil. The Arabic word for stinginess is bukhl. Stinginess means abstaining from spending money in situations where it is either religiously necessary, wajib, socially necessary, or courteously necessary to spend money. Just have a look at that definition for a few seconds. So stinginess means not spending money where it's wajib to spend money, where it's necessary. So the Urdu word is wajib there for necessary. Now, where is it necessary to spend? Where religiously necessary, that's your zakat. Where religiously you have, and your fitrana, you have to. Your qurbani, you have to. Socially or courteously necessary. So that's where Shariat is not with something wajib, but just in terms of the norm. For example, I've got an example here. If you've got friends or relatives that come to visit you, it's the norm, isn't it, to at least give them something to eat and drink. So there it's considered urf, and adat. Adatan is considered necessary, wajib. If you have a guest, a visitor, a friend comes to see you, you may spend a bit on him, at least offer him a cup of chai or something. So to not even do that is stinginess. Okay, so let's recap that definition of stinginess: to not spend where Shariat has made it wajib for you to spend, or where it's wajib from a urf, from a norm, a social norm point of view. And the example of the social norms is, like I said, friends or visitors coming to your house. So this is a disease of the heart as well. It's one of the 47. Blessed verse of the Quran. Allah Almighty has stated in the Quran, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ, that يَبْخَلُونَ, بخل, يَبْخَلُونَ بما آتاهم الله من فضله هو خيرا لهم بل هو شر لهم سيطوقون ما بخلوا. There again, بخلوا, بخل, stinginess. It's the second time it's come in this verse. به يوم القيامة ولله ميراث السماوات والأرض والله بما تعملون خبير. So the word, first he said يبخلون, بخل, and the second he said بخلوا. So the reason the words يبخلون means they are stingy, بخلوا means they were stingy as well. The reason that the words look different, يبخلون or بخلوا, in Arabic, one could mean they are stingy now, and if you want to say something in the past, they were stingy, it just look different in Arabic. And if you were saying one person was stingy, it looked different, but it still have that ba kha lam, ba kha lam. If you wanted to say two people are stingy, it just look different, but you've got those ba kha lam bukhl. Can you see those words are there? So the translation of this ayat al-Kareem, and those who act miserly, stingily, in respect to that which Allah has bestowed upon them by His grace, must never think that it is good for them, rather it is bad for them. Soon that in which they were miserly shall be a collar in the form of a snake. On the day of judgment, this mal that you were stingy with, will turn into a snake and it'll be wrapped around your neck, around their necks on the day of resurrection. And only Allah is the owner of the heavens and the earth, and Allah is aware of your actions. Let's have a look at this tafsir. Most scholars, I've skipped the name of a scholar. Most scholars have defined stinginess as not fulfilling a necessary obligation, wajib. This is why there are so many stern cautions, admonitions against stinginess, including this verse. So stinginess is important to It's important to root as well, because what's the opposite of stinginess? It means you're greedy for the dunya. So the greed for the dunya is the root of all evil. So the greed for the dunya is hubb dunya ra'su kulli khati'atin. That's a hadith, the root of the. The ulama say it's wajib for us to teach our children generosity, just like it's wajib to teach them aqidah. It's wajib to teach your children to be generous, just as it is to teach them aqidah. Because if they're not generous, then they're going to be stingy. If they're stingy or they're greedy for the world, then they're going to commit every sin in the world. So the stinginess is the root of all evil. Okay. So a blessed hadith in Tirmizi states that stinginess and a wicked character are two vices that cannot exist inside a believer. So a Muslim cannot be stingy, a Muslim cannot be a bad akhlaq. Bad akhlaq. So these are two things the Holy Prophet said. A Muslim cannot be these two things. Now we see many people many Muslims who are those two things. So what does the hadith mean? That the hadith means that these are two things that are so despicable that a Muslim, to even say a Muslim should really despise these to the extent that you would not expect a true God-fearing Muslim to have these two things in stinginess and bad akhlaqi. So the two despicable, the hadith, the interpretation of the hadith is these two things are so despicable. It's not befitting for a Muslim. A Muslim should be ashamed if he's got these two things, because Huzur alayhi salatu wasalam said a Muslim can't. If a Muslim does, it means he is very weak. Most Quranic commentators are of the opinion that stinginess in this verse refers specifically to one's failure in paying zakat. So we're still talking about that verse at the top. He further elaborates, a hadith in Sahih Bukhari says that if Allah Almighty grants money to somebody and yet he fails to pay his zakah, then on judgment day that money will emerge as a snake and wrap itself around him and simultaneously bite him, constantly bite him repeatedly, and proclaim persistently. The snake will say, I am your wealth, I am your treasure. Okay. So the snake wrapped around his neck will say, I'm your mal. A glorious hadith, stinginess causes devastation. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu narrated that the Noble Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared, avoid greed, hirs, since nations before you were destroyed by greed. Greed tempted them to be stingy, so they did. When it incited them to break ties with their relatives, they did. And when it enticed them to sin, they indulged in sins. So greed destroyed the nations before us, Greed makes you break your ties with your relatives as well. We see this all around us. We've all got examples all around us. Greed sometimes even causes children to beat up their own parents, murder their own parents. Sometimes Pakistan, where there's all these Zameen issues and biological sage brothers, sage sisters over mal, breaking ties over everything. So Huzur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, greed before you destroyed nations, and greed was the cause for families splitting up as well and committing sins. Caution about stinginess. Stinginess is an extremely despicable and condemned vice. Sometimes stinginess is a cause of committing numerous other sins. Hence, it is vital for every Muslim to avoid being stingy. So, stingy and any other haram can lead to kufr as well. Okay. There's a story there. A lady by the name of Munifa bint Rumi narrates, while residing in Makkah al-Mukarramah, one day I saw a crowd of people congregating in a public place. When I approached the crowd, I realized that they were staring at a woman whose right hand was paralyzed. The crowd asked her various questions. When the woman was asked to explain how her hand was paralyzed, she narrated a terribly disturbing tragedy. Some time ago, I lived with my parents. My father was very religious and pious. He donated a lot of money for charitable causes and frequently helped the poor as much as he could. That's the father. On the other hand, my mother, she was a miser, she was stingy, bakhil. Throughout her entire life, she only donated one old article of clothing for the sake of Allah Almighty. On one particular occasion, my father sacrificed a cow and she donated a small amount of its meat to the poor, to a poor person. Besides that, she never donated anything in charity. Then my parents died. A few days after their deaths, I saw my father in a dream. He was standing next to a reservoir and passing cups full of water to other people. He was the generous one. So I stood and observed the whole wonderful spectacle. All of a sudden, I noticed my mother lying on the ground with that same piece of donated meat and her body was covered in that same old donated piece of cloth. I'm thirsty, she yelled in desperate thirst. This painful spectacle of my mother disturbed me, and I cried, Alas, this is my mother, and that man distributing water to people is my father. I will take a cup of water from the reservoir and hand it to my mother. As soon as I filled the vessel with water and brought it to my mother, I heard a voice from the sky, Beware, if anyone gives any water to this stingy woman, their hand will become paralyzed. Then I awoke, and since that dream, my hand has been paralyzed, as you can see. So this woman that people saw in the bazaar, hand paralyzed, asked her what happened, and she explained something happened in a dream. So it happens sometimes if someone sees something, punishment in a dream or something, it can affect you in there. So stinginess can destroy a person's iman. Five causes of stinginess and their remedies. What's the first cause? The first cause of stinginess is fear of poverty. How do we cure that? The cure for this is to always remember that spending money in the path of Allah Almighty does not decrease your money at all, rather it increases it. Number two, what is the second cause of stinginess? Love of money. What is the cure? The cure for this, for the love of money, is for you to remember the isolation of your grave and realize that your money will not accompany you inside your grave. In fact, after you die, your inheritors will spend it ruthlessly. What is the third cause of stinginess? It's a domination of egotistic desires. How do we cure this? The cure for this is for you to repeatedly study the dangers as well as consequences of serving your desires. So becoming, obviously, if you're a slave to your ego, so your nafs, the more desires you have, the more cash you need to fulfill your desires. And the more hobbies or the more lavish hobbies or lifestyles that you have, the more cash you're going to need, and therefore, stinginess is going to play a part in that. Number four, the fourth cause of stinginess is wishing a bright future for your children. You can cure this by strengthening your faith, trust, and reliance upon Allah Almighty, and tell yourself, the Creator Azza wa Jal, who made my future bright, also possesses the power to grant my children bright futures too. So there's nothing wrong with, obviously, you've got to prepare for yourself for the future. Even Nabi Kareem alayhi salam gave his blessed wives, Azwajim Mutahharat, our mothers, he gave them food, a food supply of a whole year at times. So storing for a year, that's not preparing for our children for a year. But sort of being, some people are a bit too obsessed with that. As soon as a daughter's born, starting worrying about the jahez and the jewelry, and she's just born, she's only 2 days old. You know, to worry about the shadi straight away. So don't get too obsessed with the. Yeah, everyone's sort of concerned about the future, but to be too obsessed with that is not. Yeah, so Huzur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself used to at times give his Azwaji Mutahharat food supply for a year, but he himself would not store anything for himself for the next day. Okay? So what does that tell us? That, be mutawakkil, have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but don't force your tawakkul on other people around you. Don't force your tawakkul on you, even on your family, even on your wife and your kids. Don't force your tawakkul. Do the tarbiyat, right? Okay? So be strict as you want on yourself. Be strict on yourself, but don't be strict on others. You be strict with your own nafs. But when it comes to other people, as long as if they're doing something nafal or mustahab or jais, it's okay. The fifth cause of stinginess is neglecting the afterlife. The cure for this is for you to contemplate about the fact that after dying, the money that you spend in the path of Allah will benefit you. Hence, the wisest course of action would be to derive as much benefit as possible from this mortal wealth by spending it for good deeds. Tika. Will you okay for space, Ajwad? Yeah. So that's our brief chapter, but obviously you go on and on and on about stinginess. So we're just briefly covering these chapters. So the definition of stinginess, remember, it's not spending where it's wajib for you to spend money. And we've defined where is it wajib for you to spend. It can be Islamically wajib, or it can be from a social norm point of view. Islamically, where is it wajib? Your zakat, your fitrana, your qurbani, okay? And also on your wife and kids. So that's first for you to provide for them. If parents are fakir and they've got no source of income, it's wajib for you to provide for your parents and sisters and brothers as well, if you're their only source of income. And where is it wajib from a social norm point of view? If you have friends or guests come, and then it's out of courtesy, it's considered urfan wajib for you to spend on them. At least treat them to some cup of tea or something. Not even do that. That's conjusi. Some people are their conjusis. There's different levels of conjusi, and the ulama say some people are so stingy that they won't even spend on their own necessities, even if they're ill and they can buy dawai. They won't spend on medicine. They say, "Oh, chalo hafte ch waise theek ho hi jasun," and not taking dawai, not taking medicine. Thinking, well, I'm going to get better a week later anyway. So if that's Vesi because he doesn't want to take the dawai, that's a different thing. But if that's coming from a place of stinginess, I don't want to can't let go of a single pound, then that, so there are levels of stinginess, and that's a really severe level when not even spending on your own needs. I just think I'll get by. I just keep coughing for a week. So we did definition of stinginess, verse of the Quran, Hadith Sharif, we did a small story, and the 4 causes and cures. We'll cover the next chapter as well, number 16, long expectations. There's a long story there, but we'll skip that. Let's do the definition of long expectations. It's self-explanatory. Chapter 16, definition of long expectations. To have long expectations means to waste precious moments of your life expecting to achieve extremely difficult ambitions. Allah Almighty has said in the Holy Quran, ذَرْهُمْ يَأْكُلُوا وَيَتَمَتَّعُوا وَيُلْهِهِمُ الْأَمَلُ فَسَوْفَ يَعْلَمُونَ. Leave them to eat and enjoy life, and the hope to live long leads them to amusement, so they will soon come to know. So the word amal there, you can see the word amal in the Arabic. It's the third word from the end. Yulhihimul amalu. Amal is the Arabic word for long expectations. Okay? Or you can say tulul amal. Tul means long, amal means expectations. So Allah Ta'ala is talking about long expectations there in the glorious Quran. The glorious Quran. Okay. The tafsir of this ayat karima, I'll skip the name of the Mufti Sahib, Mufti Naeemuddin. Here we are being warned that being occupied with long hopes and expectations whilst immersing oneself in the pursuit of worldly pleasures is unfitting for a believer. Sayyidina Ali al-Murtada, Mawla Mushkil Kusha, Karramallahu Ta'ala Wajhal Kareem, declared long expectations will make you forget the afterlife, and satisfying your desires will block the truth from you. Blessed hadith, long expectations are a cause of loving this world. Amir al-Mu'mineen Sayyidina Ali al-Murtada, the line of Allah, Karramallahu Ta'ala Wajhal Kareem, narrated that the most beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam declared, there are 2 things that I strongly fear for you: obeying desires and long expectations. Following desires will obstruct you from the truth, and long expectations will make you fall in love with this world. We're still on the hadith. These are the words of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Remember, verily Allah Almighty grants this world to those whom He loves as well as those whom He does not. But when He loves someone, He grants him the wealth of faith. We'll come to that. In fact, we'll come to that. Back to that sentence. Listen well, some people are religious while some are materialistic. So be religious people rather than materialistic ones. Remember, this world is departing with its back turned to you. Know that the afterlife is close. Beware, today you are in a day of deeds without judgment, but soon you will face judgment day when there will be no deeds. The hadith finishes there. So all of that, those 10 odd lines, the words of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. 2 particular sentences that you just focus on. When Allah Ta'ala gives, Allah दुनिया जो है ना वो दुश्मनों दोस्तों दोनों को देता है. दुनिया Allah gives, mal, we've heard so many times, it's worth less than the wing of a mosquito in the bargain of Allah. दुनिया अल्लाह पाक अपने दोस्तों दुश्मनों दोनों को देता है. दीन और रूहानियत सिर्फ दोस्तों को देता है. So having loads of money, the billionaires, whether the top 20 billionaires or all kafirs, that doesn't mean the fazl of Allah Ta'ala is upon them. Okay, so dunya, it's usually the poorest people, the most fakir people who are strongest in the deen a lot of times. Well, the hadith Pak says, very famous hadith, says that even Nabi Kareem alayhi salam said the words to the effect that whenever the prophets came, it was always the poor people who supported them the most, and the rich tribe leaders, they always opposed most of the time. generally speaking, they opposed the prophets. जब भी अंबिया किराम आते थे तो फकीर लोग ज़्यादा, गरीब लोग ज़्यादा जो है वो they used to support them. So that's one sentence there. The dunya, verily Allah Almighty grants this world, the dunya, to those whom He loves as well as those whom He does not. But when He loves someone, He grants him the wealth of faith. Iman sirf Allah Pak doston ko deta hai. And the last line, today you are in the day of deeds. Today there's amal, there's no hisab. Tomorrow there'll be hisab, there won't be amal. So today there's actions, there's no judgment. Tomorrow is going to be judgment, no action. Okay. A ruling on long expectations. Sayyidina Imam al-Ghazali rahmatullahi states, long expectations prevent you from carrying out praiseworthy deeds and from worshipping. They are the source of all troubles and evils. Harboring long expectations is an incurable disease which causes people to suffer from many other maladies. ठीक है? Yeah. He's used the word, Imam Ghazali has said it's an incurable, la ilaj, mareez, but he probably means very difficult to cure. Okay? No mareez, no spiritual malady is impossible to cure. It's not absolutely impossible to cure it. So, but some diseases are more harder than others to cure. You gotta really work on them. So by incurable disease, if it was incurable, we wouldn't be studying the causes and the cures. We would, because obviously the whole point of studying these is if any of these 47 we find inside ourselves, then try to eradicate them. If there's something that's impossible to eradicate, why would we study the causes and the cures? So by incurable, it just means very, very difficult. I'll leave just to save time, the king's repentance. That's a story about long expectations. 1, 2, 3. It's about 3.5 pages long. We'll go to page 127, but please do read that on your own as well. Page 127. And the causes and cures for long expectations. Yeah. Dear Islamic brothers, although having long expectations is a deadly disease, every disease has causes, which if we eliminate the causes, it will eradicate the disease. So here are the causes and cures for long expectations, and there's two. There's two. Number one, the first cause of long expectations is falling in love with this world. When a person falls in love with this world to the extent that his heart cannot withstand to be separated from material passions, pleasures, and desires, then his heart will refuse to contemplate about death, the terminator of worldly pleasures and temptations. Death is the terminator of worldly pleasures and temptations. When we detest a particular thing, we attempt to distance ourselves from it. Humans are extremely busy fulfilling useless desires. This is why they have a strong yearning to have all their desires fulfilled and become immortal, a desire to become immortal and live an everlasting life on this earth. Hence, humans constantly remain occupied with worldly ideas and act as though their homes, wives, children, friends, relatives, money, etc. are all inseparable. Once these material articles dominate the hearts of humans, they become totally oblivious of death. What is the cure for this? How do you cure um, this lahubbe dunya? The cure for this is cause is for you to believe in Judgment Day and its potential traumatizing torment, along with potential immeasurable reward for good deeds. Once you firmly believe this without a shadow of a doubt, then you will no longer love materialistic objects of desire, since the love of greater ambitions obliterates the love of inferior desires. When you observe this world with contempt and the afterlife with admiration, you will resent exerting your attention towards this mortal life, even in exchange for the kingdom of the East and West. I'll go to the second cause. Number 2, the second cause of long expectations is ignorance, jahalat. The second cause is jahalat, ignorance. Ignorance can mean that you are convinced that you will not die whilst young. Do you not stop to count the number of old people in your city and realize that their population is less than a tenth of the population of youngsters? The reason for this low population statistic is that most people die young. With the death of each old person, 1,000 children and youngsters die. So we're ignorant if we think that death is only in old age. Ignorance can also mean that people assume they will not die if they are healthy and that sudden deaths are rare. This is ignorant as well, because such deaths are not rare occurrences. Even if they were rare occurrences, you must not forget that it is not uncommon for a sickness to strike unexpectedly, and if you can fall ill unexpectedly, then it is also not unlikely for you to die unexpectedly. The cure for this is for you to convince yourself that the way other human beings die, I too will almost definitely die. My corpse will also be carried to a graveyard, and I too will descend into a grave. The stone slabs of my grave might already be prepared now. Failing to snap out of this negligence by continuing to postpone my preparation for the afterlife is absolute stupidity. Okay. Um, and we can see that around us, almost every day we're hearing about 30, late 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds having strokes, and how, our ghizas. And there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ as well, that one sign of judgment day is illnesses that your fathers and your forefathers have never heard of. Specifically, the hadith says that when obscenity, fahashi, and zina are spread, then you will see illnesses that your forefathers never heard of us. And with the kind of food that we eat, I think the life expectations are lowering all the time, isn't it? With the way people are looking after themselves. Just a hadith, I've got another hadith in front of me as well. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said that humans grow old, but two things always remain young inside them. Um, uh, the love for a long life and the love for wealth. The love for a long life and the love for wealth. These stay young. The words of the Prophet ﷺ are very interesting there. You grow old, but these two stay young inside you. So these two desires stay young. So the word old and young in the hadith, the love for a long life and the love for mal. If someone's obsessed with you do see people who are, wallahu alam, but sometimes even retired, even pensioners, married off their daughters, sons. You think they'd relax. You've married everyone off. Zindagi ke sare, what you consider as burdens. You've married your daughters, you've married your sons, you've got your own house, you're not saving up to pay for your mortgage, it's on your name. Sit comfortably. But they still, there are some who just sticking their noses into other people's business all the time, and still got the love of the dunya, or conversations about the dunya that they're obsessed with at times. So that's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that humans grow old, but these two things stay young inside them. Yeah, I did mention earlier as well a very important thing, that is wajib for us. I think it was before some brothers came, so I'll just repeat it. It's wajib to teach your children generosity, just the way it's wajib to teach them aqidah. Because if you're not teaching them to be generous, then what's going to happen? They're going to be obsessed. And with the dunya, and the love of the dunya is the root of all evil as well. So it's always, Sahaba Kiram used to avoid 9 out of 10 halal things. Even just because something's halal doesn't mean indulge in it. Although it's not guna to indulge in halal, but just having a habit of it can make people, every time you indulge in halal things, it pushes you towards something haram. Okay. Don't be strict on yourself. Sorry, I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say, don't be strict on yourself, be strict on others. Be strict on yourself if you want to, but don't be strict on others. That was from the tawakkul, Aka alayhi salatu wasalam saving for his azwaji mutaharat, giving a whole year's supply of wheat or barley, but himself not saving anything for the next day. So Aka alayhi salatu wasalam did not force his tawakkul on the azwaji mutaharat. Having tawakkul is farz ayn, and being naraz with your destiny is one of the major sins. So tawakkul is farz ayn as well. Tawakkul is farz ayn. But at the moment, because we're studying the things that we shouldn't have in our heart, there's another book consisting of the things that we should have: the patience and the tawakkul and the qanaat, being satisfied with destiny. We could maybe study that later, but at the moment, because we're studying the negatives, we're focusing on the negatives. So alhamdulillah, these are our 2 chapters done. So today we've covered chapter 15 and 16, the 15th and 16th of the 47 diseases. The 15th was bukhal, stinginess. Keep in mind the definition of that. And number 16 was long expectations. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to do amal. It's 7:34. You can